What drives a respected father to become a killer? At what point does justice blur into vengeance? Tonight's story forces us to confront these haunting questions as we unravel a tale of power, betrayal, and devastating consequences. In a quiet suburban town where manicured lawns and white picket fences paint a picture of perfection, two families were about to collide in an unthinkable tragedy. Behind closed doors, a deadly secret was festering, one that would shatter lives and challenge our very understanding of right and wrong. Meet D. Braxton, a charismatic high school principal in his late 40s. His credentials were impeccable, his reputation sterling. Parents entrusted their children to his care without hesitation. Students looked up to him as a mentor and role model. To the outside world, he embodied success, a devoted husband, caring father, and pillar of the community. But beneath this carefully crafted facade lurked a darkness that would prove fatal. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, your gateway to the chilling world of real-life horror. Here, we delve into the darkest corners of humanity, unearthing terrifying stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. Just down the street lived the Green family. Jonah Green, a blue-collar worker with calloused hands and unshakable principles, had dedicated his life to giving his daughter Grace opportunities he never had. Grace was his pride and joy, a brilliant 17-year-old senior with dreams as vast as the sky. Their bond seemed unbreakable, built on years of trust and mutual devotion. Yet something had shifted. The warmth in Grace's eyes had dimmed. Her laughter, once filling their home, grew hollow. Late nights at school became more frequent, her explanations increasingly vague. Jonah felt it in his bones. Something was terribly wrong with his little girl. What Jonah couldn't know was that his daughter had become entangled in a web of manipulation and desire, spun by the very men he had trusted to guide her future. Principal Braxton had crossed an unforgivable line, using his position of authority to draw Grace into a relationship that would destroy multiple lives. The facade of Principal Braxton's perfect life had begun to crack. His marriage to Regina, while intact on paper, had become a hollow performance. The emotional intimacy they once shared had withered, replaced by practiced pleasantries and mechanical routines. This void in his life had awakened something darker within him, a hunger for control, validation, and forbidden excitement that his respectable position could no longer satisfy. At first, his attention toward Grace seemed innocuous, a concerned educator taking interest in a promising student's future, but his intentions were far from pure. Each conversation became longer, more personal. The boundaries between mentor and student slowly dissolved, replaced by something more sinister. He expertly manipulated her vulnerability, her desire for approval, weaving a web of emotional dependency that would prove impossible to escape. Grace, young and inexperienced, found herself drawn into this dangerous dance. Darnell made her feel special, understood in ways her peers couldn't comprehend. She never saw the predatory nature of his attention, couldn't recognize the calculated grooming that masked itself as genuine care. By the time she realized the gravity of their relationship, she was already trapped in a spiral of secrets and shame. Meanwhile, Jonah's parental instincts screamed warnings he couldn't ignore. The subtle changes in his daughter tormented him. Her once open nature had become guarded, her confident stride replaced by nervous energy. The distance between them grew with each passing day, filled with half-truths and avoided glances. His attempts to reach her were met with carefully constructed excuses that rang increasingly hollow. Camille, Grace's mother, tried to rationalize the changes. "She's just stressed about college applications," she would say, attempting to soothe Jonah's growing concerns. But her words brought little comfort. Jonah had always trusted his instincts, and now they were signaling a threat to his family he couldn't yet identify. The truth would emerge in the most devastating way possible. One evening, as Grace sat alone in her room, overwhelmed by the weight of her secret, Camille noticed something different in her daughter's demeanor. It wasn't just teenage angst or academic pressure. There was a profound despair that no mother could ignore. When Camille finally asked the question that would shatter their world, Grace's tears told the story before her words could form. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Grace was pregnant, and the father was none other than Principal Braxton. The truth unleashed a tsunami of emotions that would sweep away everything in its path. Camille's world tilted on its axis as she struggled to process the magnitude of this betrayal. But it was Jonah's reaction that would transform this family tragedy into something far more sinister. As Camille struggled to find the words to tell her husband, the weight of their daughter's confession pressed heavily upon her. She found Jonah in the garage, his hands busy with routine maintenance, his last moments of normalcy before their world would implode. When the words finally left her lips, the change in Jonah was immediate and terrifying. The tools clattered to the ground as his entire body went rigid, his face transforming with an emotion beyond rage. Pregnant. The word escaped through clenched teeth, his voice barely recognizable. But it was the second revelation that ignited something primal within him. The moment Darnell Braxton's name entered the conversation, Jonah's transformation was complete. Years of protective instincts, paternal love, and trust crystallized into a single, destructive purpose. Without a word, he moved through their home with deadly precision, his steps carrying him to the locked cabinet where he kept his firearm. The weight of the gun in his hands felt like destiny, a terrible, irreversible destiny. Camille's pleas fell on deaf ears as she desperately tried to reach the man she had known, but that man was gone. In his place stood an avenging father, consumed by a rage that defied reason. "Jonah, please," Camille begged, her voice breaking. "Think about Grace. Think about what this will do to our family." But her words couldn't penetrate the storm of fury that had consumed him. In Jonah's mind, justice had failed before it had even been given a chance. The system that was supposed to protect his daughter had already betrayed her. The very person entrusted with her education had violated that sacred trust in the most heinous way. The drive to the Braxton residence felt surreal, like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. Street lights cast eerie shadows across Jonah's face as he gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white with tension. His mind played torturous images of Darnell with Grace, each thought feeding the inferno of his rage. Regina Braxton opened the door to find Jonah on her doorstep, his presence radiating an energy that made her blood run cold. The confusion in her eyes quickly turned to fear as she sensed the lethal intent emanating from the men before her. When Darnell appeared in the doorway, the atmosphere crystallized into something electric and dangerous. "Tell her," Jonah commanded, his voice carrying the weight of impending violence. "Tell your wife what you did to my daughter." The moment hung suspended as Darnell's carefully constructed world began to crumble. Regina's eyes darted between the two men, the horror of understanding slowly dawning on her face. The confession, when it finally came, was barely a whisper from Darnell's lips. That simple yes shattered Regina's world, transforming her understanding of her husband in an instant. But before the full weight of this revelation could settle, the metallic gleam of Jonah's gun caught the living room light. Regina's scream pierced the air as Jonah raised the weapon. Time seemed to slow, each heartbeat thundering in the silence before the shot. Darnell's eyes widened with the realization that his sins had finally caught up to him. The gunshot shattered the suburban quiet, its echo carrying with it the finality of retribution. Darnell crumpled to the floor, his life ending in the same living room where he had hosted school board meetings and family gatherings. Regina's anguished wails filled the space as she fell to her knees beside her husband's body, her world collapsing around her. But Jonah stood motionless, the gun still warm in his hand, his face devoid of emotion. In his mind, justice had been served. The arrival of police cars painted the neighborhood in alternating red and blue, their sirens drawing curious neighbors from their homes. Officers approached with weapons drawn, finding a scene that would haunt them for years to come. Jonah offered no resistance as they cuffed him, his mission complete, his daughter's honor avenged in his eyes. The aftermath of that fatal night rippled through the community like a shock wave. The story dominated local headlines before catching national attention. A respected principal's abuse of power, a teenage girl's pregnancy, and a father's deadly revenge. It was a tragedy that touched on society's deepest fears and most primal instincts. The trial that followed became a media sensation, forcing the community to grapple with uncomfortable questions about justice, vengeance, and the lengths a parent might go to protect their child. Jonah's defense team painted him as a desperate father driven to extremes by an unthinkable betrayal. The prosecution argued that no amount of provocation could justify premeditated murder. Grace's testimony brought the courtroom to tears as she recounted how Darnell had manipulated her, using his position of authority to blur the lines between mentorship and predation. Her words laid bare the calculated nature of his grooming, revealing how he had exploited her trust and innocence for his own gratification. Each day of the trial forced Regina to relive her humiliation as the extent of her husband's betrayal became public record. She sat in the courtroom, a widow whose grief was complicated by the knowledge that the men she mourned had lived a double life, preying on a student under his care. The trial's impact reverberated through every facet of the community. Grace, once a bright student with limitless potential, found herself drowning in a sea of guilt and shame. A confident young woman who had dreamed of college and career success became a shadow of herself. Each morning brought the crushing weight of responsibility. Her father behind bars, a family destroyed, all stemming from a relationship she had been too young to recognize as predatory. The whispers followed her everywhere. Former friends avoided eye contact in hallways, teachers struggled to meet her gaze, and the community that had once celebrated her achievements now viewed her through a lens of scandal. Her pregnancy, a physical reminder of Darnell's manipulation, forced her to confront adult decisions no teenager should face. Regina Braxton's life became an exercise in endurance. Her identity as the principal's wife, once a source of pride, transformed into a mark of shame. The comfortable life she had built crumbled around her, leaving her to question every moment of her marriage. Had there been signs she missed? How many other students might have fallen prey to Darnell's predatory behavior? The questions haunted her sleepless nights. The community itself became divided. Some saw Jonah as a hero, a father who had done what any parent might consider in the face of such a betrayal. Others condemned him as a vigilante who had taken the law into his own hands, arguing that his actions had only compounded the tragedy. The debate raged in coffee shops, church gatherings, and social media, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable questions about justice and morality. As the jury deliberated, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Jonah sat stoically, his face betraying no emotion as he awaited his fate. The verdict, when it came, reflected the complexity of the case: guilty of second-degree murder, with a sentence of 25 years. The judge acknowledged the extraordinary circumstances while emphasizing that vigilante justice could not be condoned in a civilized society. The sentence hit Grace like a physical blow. Her father, the man who had sacrificed everything to give her a better life, would spend decades behind bars because of choices she felt responsible for. The guilt became her constant companion, coloring every aspect of her existence. Visits to the prison were exercises in unspoken pain, each meeting a reminder of how far they had fallen from their once close relationship. Camille found herself trying to hold together the fragments of their shattered family. She had to be both mother and father to Grace, supporting her daughter through pregnancy while grappling with her own feelings of failure and loss. The house that had once echoed with laughter became quiet, filled with the ghosts of what might have been. In the years that followed, the tragedy became a cautionary tale about power, trust, and the devastating consequences of their abuse. Regina eventually sold the house, unable to live among memories that had been poisoned by revelation. She moved to another state, seeking anonymity and a chance to rebuild some semblance of a life, though the shadow of Darnell's betrayal followed her like a persistent ghost. Grace gave her baby up for adoption, a decision that added another layer of complexity to her emotional burden. The choice, while heart-wrenching, represented her first step toward reclaiming control of her life. She eventually enrolled in a community college in a different city, where nobody knew her story, where she could attempt to forge a new identity from the ashes of her past. Behind prison walls, Jonah found a different kind of peace. His rage, once all-consuming, gave way to a quiet acceptance. He never expressed regret for his actions, maintaining that he had done what any father would do. His only sorrow was for the pain his choice had caused Grace, the very person he had sought to protect. The school district implemented stringent new policies regarding student-teacher interactions, but the damage to public trust ran deep. Parents looked at educators with new suspicion, and the open-door policy became more than just a recommendation. It became a survival strategy for teachers wary of any hint of impropriety. As this story draws to a close, we're left grappling with profound questions about human nature. What drives someone in a position of trust to abuse that power? How thin is the line between justice and vengeance? At what point does protection become destruction? The tragedy of the Green and Braxton families serves as a mirror, reflecting our own assumptions about morality, justice, and the lengths to which love, both pure and twisted, can drive us. It challenges us to examine the foundations of trust upon which we build our communities and raises uncomfortable questions about how well we really know those we entrust with our children's futures. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of this story is its ordinariness. It began in a neighborhood like any other, with people who seemed just like us. It reminds us that darkness can lurk behind the most respectable facades, that tragedy can unfold in the most unexpected places, and that the choices we make in moments of crisis can echo through generations. For those of you witnessing this story for the first time, we invite you to join our True Crime Stories archive community. Subscribe to delve deeper into more compelling cases that challenge our understanding of human nature and justice. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Jonah's position? Where do you draw the line between justice and revenge? Remember, real crime stories like these aren't just about the shocking moments that make headlines, they're about the complex web of human emotions, choices, and consequences that lead ordinary people down extraordinary paths. This is True Crime Stories Archive, where we uncover the darkest corners of human nature to better understand ourselves. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous predators were the most respectable disguises.